Do not try anything you're about to see.
I am not an expert. I'm just a curious idiot that loves to experiment.
Whether it's caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, pharmaceuticals, or increasingly psychedelics, every day billions of people consume a drug of some sort to treat what ails them and modify their experience. And with marijuana legalization sweeping North America and states like Colorado and Oregon moving towards the legalization of psilocybin mushrooms, the stigma around psychedelics is fading, and as a result, more people than ever are experimenting with psychedelic microdosing. Now you may be saying, psychedelic microdosing, what the hell corner of the internet have I gotten myself into? You may be asking, why would I try that? And how could that possibly even be a safe thing to do? And those are good questions. So hopefully my experience can help you answer some of those questions. While I have taken psychedelics before, including numerous encounters with ayahuasca, I hadn't ever thought of taking psychedelics regularly until the summer of 2017, when I began reading about studies and an overwhelming amount of anecdotal evidence that suggested microdosing psychedelics could be useful for a range of things from PTSD to social anxiety, depression, procrastination, and even addiction. A few of which I've struggled with to varying degrees throughout my life. So I naturally got sucked into a research hole, as one does, and I landed on the work of James Fadiman. James Fadiman is a psychologist and renowned psychedelic researcher whose suggested microdosing schedule has become the standard for newbies looking to dip their toes into psychedelic microdosing. So after some consideration and preparation, I decided to try microdosing for a week, starting on a day off. But before we get into my experience, let's back a little bit up and talk about what microdosing even is. Microdosing is technically a, quote, subperceptual dose of a psychedelic, but in my experience, I feel like it's more of a barely perceptual dose of psychedelics, which means the dose should be low enough that you're barely even aware you took it. A small dose in this range has much different effects than a larger reality ego melting macro dose of psychedelics. Regardless of whether you're micro or macro dosing psychedelics, you should always abide by the rule of start low and go slow. That is, start with a low dose and take time to gauge its effects before taking it again or upping dose size. This is a bit subjective, as everyone's sensitivity to psychedelics is a little bit different, but generally speaking, a microdose ranges from either 0.1 to 0.5 grams of psilocybin mushrooms or 5 to 15 micrograms of LSD. To find my optimal dose, I started with a low dose of around 0.1 grams of mushrooms or 5 micrograms of LSD, and slowly increased dose size until I found a dose that felt good without feeling signs of a physical high or racing thoughts or anxiety. On days when I began to feel like I had taken more than a microdose, like I was really starting to feel physical effects, I would just lower my dose the next time down to whatever my last dose was that I recorded that was barely perceptible. This brings me to a super important point: keeping a journal. Each time I dosed, I recorded the date and time, pre-dose observations, dose size, and post-dose observations. Tracking my doses was super critical to finding my optimal dose, which ended up being around 0.175 grams of psilocybin or 8 micrograms of LSD. Dr. Fadiman's recommended microdosing schedule is no more than once every 3 days. In addition to the fact that we tend to build tolerance for psychedelics quickly, James Fadiman lays out his reasoning for a 3-day schedule in his book, The Psychedelic Explorer's Guide. On day 1, you dose, you feel the effects, and you keep a journal of what you do and how you feel. Day 2, you're probably still experiencing some of the effects. Day 3, you should not be feeling any effects at all. This is a day of rest and to compare and contrast with how you felt on and off the substance. On that 4th day, you can dose again. I gotta tell you, I was definitely a little nervous that first time, even though I'd taken psychedelics before, but I was curious as hell. My first dose was pretty small, but very enjoyable. It added brightness to my day, gave me clarity, almost as if the seas of anxiety and overthinking were parted, and I just whisked straight through tasks and things I'd been procrastinating on. I went outside, I walked to the farmer's market, I spent a lot of time outside. I could not get enough nature pulsating through my senses. The more green, the better. Needless to say, it felt like a really great day, and I was actually excited to try microdosing again. Over that summer, I continued to microdose on a 3-day schedule, slowly tweaking my dose till I had one that I wouldn't really physically notice. This allowed me to use it during the week as a clarity, creative energy, and positive get-it-done mindset hack. I found myself going to the gym regularly each week for literally the first time in my life. And again, like I said before, microdosing made me get outside more and really appreciate the beauty that surrounds me in the Pacific Northwest. While my summer of microdosing was highly enjoyable and very productive, I do not microdose anymore on a 3-day schedule. I still microdose occasionally, but I stopped microdosing regularly after 2.5 months, which is pretty average. James Fadiman actually says that most people continue microdosing after their initial month, but just not as often. That, of course, could be for a number of reasons. Many people report that they have a lasting positive mindset shift even after they quit microdosing that makes them feel like they don't even need to microdose anymore. Some people have even reported that microdosing has helped them overcome other addictions in their life. I notice I tend to consume other substances like alcohol and even coffee much less when I microdose. That's anecdotal, of course. While psychedelics have not been shown to be addictive, the long-term adverse health effects are still unknown. And because psilocybin is a 5-HT2B agonist, frequent large doses may contribute to heart valve disease. Obviously, this is something to be concerned about. However, taking 0.5 grams of psilocybin twice per week may still be under the cardiotoxic threshold for psilocybin. This is why more research is needed into psychedelics in general. I know Tim Ferriss recently helped fund a study on psilocybin for mental disorders at Johns Hopkins, so I will link to more studies on the health effects of psilocybin and psychedelics in general in the description of this video. The other reason many people stop microdosing is because of the legal status of psychedelics where they live, which is totally understandable. I have, however, seen a recent push for psilocybin legalization in states like California, Oregon, Colorado, and others. I've even heard talk of psychedelic dispensaries. Can you imagine that? Okay, that's it. I would love to hear your questions and your personal experiences. Please subscribe and like this video and share it if it satisfied your curiosities. Till next time, peace.